this storm system gets closer to the metro area, we want to remind folks that if you would happen to lose power, if you happen to lose electricity, you can still get weather information by tuning into News Radio 1000 KTOK and 101.9 The Twister as this storm system continues to move closer to the metro area. Right now, the most intense portion of it is across northern Comanche.
What made this storm even more dangerous wasn't just its strength, it was its speed. The Bridge Creek Moore tornado wasn't crawling across the landscape like the slow-moving funnels people imagine. It was moving fast enough that hesitation became deadly. You didn't have the luxury of standing outside, watching the sky, trying to confirm what you were seeing. And that's exactly what some people did. Because again, this is human nature. We don't react to warnings, we react to certainty. There were people that day who stepped outside to look, not because they were careless, not because they were stupid, because the brain struggles to accept something it hasn't visually confirmed. And by the time they saw it, it was already too late to make a calm, rational decision. That's one of the most dangerous myths about disasters. The idea that you'll know what to do when the moment comes. You won't. You'll hesitate. You'll question. You'll try to gather one more piece of information. And in a storm like this, that extra moment is everything. As a tornado carved its path through Bridge Creek and towards Moore, it didn't just maintain its intensity, it evolved. The internal structure of the tornado became more complex. Multiple vortices spun inside the larger circulation, each one capable of producing extreme, localized destruction. That's why some homes were obliterated while others, just a few feet away, were partially standing. It wasn't randomness, it was layered violence. Imagine not one tornado, but several, rotating within each other, each one capable of tearing apart whatever it touched. Now imagine that entire system moving towards you faster than you can process. This is where the idea of taking shelter starts to feel, well, inadequate. Because what does shelter mean when the air itself becomes a weapon? There were storm shelters that saved lives that day, absolutely, yeah. But there were also situations where people in above ground safe areas, interior rooms, hallways, closets, found themselves exposed to forces those spaces were never designed to withstand. Roofs were torn away, walls collapsed inward. Debris became projectiles moving at highway speeds or faster. And here's another uncomfortable truth. Most homes in Tornado Alley are not built for EF5 tornadoes. They're built for cost efficiency. Wooden frames, nails instead of reinforced anchors, structures designed to stand under normal conditions, not withstand 300-mile-per-hour winds. We've essentially built entire regions where the most likely catastrophic event is something the majority of buildings are fundamentally unequipped to survive. And we've accepted that. Because upgrading everything would be expensive. Because it's easier to say, it probably won't happen to me. Until it does. As the tornado moves into Moore, it continues to intensify. This is where some of the most widely known footage comes from. Storm chasers tracking the tornado as it grew into a massive wedge dominating the horizon. You've probably seen clips of it. What most of those clips don't fully capture is the scale. This wasn't just a tornado you could see. It was a tornado that filled your field of vision. There wasn't no, around you. No, maybe it'll just miss us. If it was coming towards you, it was everything. And yet, even with that visibility, people still misjudge it. Look here, distance is deceptive, especially with something that large. A tornado that wide doesn't look like it's moving fast, even when it is. It almost looks slow. Distant, manageable. That illusion has cost people their lives, because by the time it feels close, it's already on top of you. Emergency responders that day faced a different kind of challenge. This wasn't a single incident they could respond to. It was a moving disaster. Entire areas were hit simultaneously. Communication lines were disrupted. Roads were blocked by debris. and the scale of destruction made it difficult to even assess where help was needed the most. Well, this is another part people don't think about. After a disaster like this, there is no immediate rescue operation in the way we imagine. This is chaos first, confusion, people helping themselves, neighbors digging through rubble with their hands, strangers pulling each other out of debris because there's no organized response yet. Because the system itself has to recover before it can help anybody else. And during that window, people either make it or they don't. That's reality. When the storms finally dissipated, what it left behind was more than damage. It left behind a recalibration of what was possible. Meteorologists had to confront the fact that wind speeds had reached levels they hadn't fully accounted for. Engineers had to reevaluate building standards. Emergency planners had to reconsider how warnings were communicated. But here's the thing. Those lessons don't always translate into long-term change because time creates distance, and distance creates complacency. The further we get from an event like this, the more it becomes a story instead of a warning. People move into new homes built in the same way. Communities rebuild in the same locations. Warning systems do improve, but human behavior doesn't change nearly as fast. We still think, it won't be that bad. We'll have time, we'll figure it out, and most of the time that's true. Most tornadoes are survivable. Most storms don't reach this level. But that's exactly why events like Ridge Creek are so important. They remind us of the upper limit, not the average, the limit. And when you design your mindset around the average, the limit will destroy you. There's also something else worth talking about, right? Something people don't usually want to talk about. We romanticize disasters. Not openly, not intentionally, but we do it. We watch the footage, we study the storms, we're fascinated by the power. Storm chasing has become a culture, a profession, even entertainment. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But it does create a subtle disconnect. Because when you watch a tornado through a screen, it feels like an event. When you are inside it, it's not an event. It's the collapse of everything familiar in a matter of seconds. And no amount of footage prepares you for that. The Bridge Creek tornado wasn't cinematic. It wasn't dramatic in a way that, builds suspense. It was sudden, overwhelming, final. And that's the part that doesn't translate well into highlight clips or viral videos. Which is why people continue to underestimate storms like this. So what do you actually take from something like this? Well, not fear. Fear doesn't help you. What you take is respect. Real respect. The kind that changes behavior. The kind that makes you act immediately when a warning is issued. Not because you are panicking, but because you understand what's possible. The kind that makes you question whether your environment actually gives you a chance in a worst case scenario. Because that's the real question. Not will this happen, but if it does, what are my odds? And if your answer relies on luck, then you don't have a plan. You have hope. And hope is not a strategy against physics. The Bridge Creek tornado didn't just break records, it broke assumptions. It forced people, at least temporarily, to confront the idea that some disasters are not about managing damage. They're about surviving something that is fundamentally beyond control. And maybe that's the most important takeaway here. Not that tornadoes are dangerous, like everybody knows that, but there are levels to that danger that most people never truly consider until they have no choice. I'm your host, Curtis. See you next time.